When I found out what a colourless blender pencil could actually do, honestly, I was shook. Suddenly, all of those insanely smooth marker-like pages I'd see on Instagram started to make absolute sense to me. So I would look at them and think, there is absolutely no way that that picture has only been coloured in with pencils. But, you know, it's true. And this is why. These blender pencils are a total game changer for blending and finishing your coloured pencil work. Today I'm going to show you exactly how I use them and share a few of my favourite tips and tricks to get the best out of them. So a coloured pencil blender looks exactly like a regular pencil, but inside there is oil or wax instead of a pigment. And this is basically the same binder that is in your coloured pencils, but without any colour mixed in. These pencils are designed to blend and smooth out your coloured pencils. When you go over your colouring with it, it smooshes all the pigments together and fills in any paper grain, so eliminates all those little tiny white specks you can usually see. This makes your colours look heaps more richer, heaps more smoother, and your final picture so much more polished. I'll show you on this page that I'm doing right now. You can actually see I've only used a blender pencil on a little bit of it, so I haven't finished it yet. So you can see just by looking here, this is the area where I've blended, and you can see there's none of these little white marks that you can see. This area here is not blended at all, and this has all been blended, and you can see really well the difference that it makes. So when I bring you in, you can see really obviously the line here where I stopped using the blender. So you can see those white specks coming through here, and here it looks so smooth, all the colours all joined in together, and there is none of that white specks coming through. So the actual colour looks so much more vibrant, makes it look like it's a marker, not a pencil. There are plenty of different brands of colourless blender pencils, but I use the Prismacolor colourless blender, which just this one here. I colour with Prismacolor. That's the pencil I use mostly. So that's why I've got this pencil. I just think it really works well with those pencils. But another really popular one is the Caran d'Ache full blender, and that supposedly works really well on Prisma as well. Also works well on oil pencils. This one here is supposed to work well on oil pencils too, but I have only used it on wax-based pencils. I haven't actually tried it. But if you are after something that is specifically oil-based, I've heard that the Lyra Splendor blender is a really good option for that. So they're not expensive either, so you could just get a few different brands and see which one works for you. Why not just use a white pencil, I can hear you saying. Well, here is a little example of why a blender pencil really differs from using a white pencil for blending. So I'm just going to colour in this little area here with my white pencil, my white Prismacolor, and you'll be able to see the difference. So you can see with this here, when I bring it up a little bit, it's exactly the same coloured pencil underneath. But you can see this here on the outside is blended with the blender pencil, and this here is blended with the white. Two things you can see. I think you can see the lines of your colouring a lot more obviously when you're using a white pencil for blending. Also, it really dulls the colour. So if you notice here, it brightens the colour and deepens the colour, whereas using the white will really dull your colour. So it mutes whatever colour you're using underneath, which is good, and it will work for some things, whereas I did want to mute this colour here a little bit so it's slightly different from the colour around it. So it worked really well for me. So it works in some circumstances, but having that blender pencil can just make such a difference to your overall page than using a white pencil. You can also use your blender pencil for smoothing out gradients. So I'll just do a quick gradient and we will have a look at how well it smooths out. I'll do a quick gradient here and then I'll use the blender pencil and we can see what the difference is and how well it smooths everything out. Okay, so let's see how well this smooths this gradient out. I always start from the lightest colour, because if you go from the darkest colour, the pigment does transfer. So it's easier just to go from the lightest colour and then move up into the darkest colour. So you're transferring a lighter colour. You can see how it does make the blend a little bit more smoother. I really do like using it for blending, especially when you have different colours blending into each other. So this is a little bit of a unusual colour combination, going from the light really into quite a dark colour, but just to show you that it will help that blend. So if you just look there, you can actually see how it just helps the blend, even when it's like a blend that you wouldn't really usually put together. Another way you can use the wax blender pencil is to do some wax resistant. So just a simple way that I can show you, which is the easiest way, is if you were doing some bricks on a building, for example, you can use your pencil to lay down the lines. This is just going to be super rough, but just so you can see what I mean. And then once they're laid down, you can just go over the top with your pencil lightly, and you'll see that there is a slight line that shows up. So if you wanted to do some brickwork, that's a little bit different. And I'm sure there's lots of other ways you could use them. Maybe if you wanted to do stars in the night sky or something like that. It's quite light and delicate, but I really like that look if you're just going for a light and delicate look. So if I bring it up here, you can see here. You can see where the lines that I've put in and how the pencil has resisted to go over the top of it. So they're the main ways you can use the blender pencils. Now I'm just going to show you a few tips and tricks that I've learnt using blender pencils. The first tip I have for you is to do your blender pencil as the last layer. So don't do a layer, use your blender pencil, and then layer over the top. Sometimes what will happen is if you try and do that, because the blender pencil is just wax, you're filling in and smushing all the pigment together, and you're filling in all the grain in your paper. So there's nothing for your pencil to grip to. So it's a lot easier if you do all your layers first and then at the end go through with your blender pencil. I find that that works a lot easier. The other tip I have is to use small circular strokes. So strokes more like this. It's going to stop you from leaving those streaky lines behind. If you do straight up and down or across strokes, sometimes you will be able to see them at the end, whereas you do a circular stroke, it's a lot less obvious at the end. Also, another great tip is pressure does make a difference. So if you want more of a burnished look, press down super, super hard and it will give you that shiny, waxy look that you sometimes see when you're looking at people's pencil work. But if you don't want that, just go medium. You don't have to press really, really hard. You can just use a medium light stroke and it will work. If you really want everything smushed in together and that waxy look, press really, really hard. The next tip is about using gel pens over the top of Colorless blender pencils. I find that using a gel pen over the top of a Colorless blender pencil is sometimes a nightmare. It depends what gel pens you're using, but it does seem to skip a lot more when you're going over the blender pencil than it does over normal pencil. So I will usually stick to using acrylic markers to cover up lines after I've used a blender pencil, just so I don't get that issue, because it does drive me a little bit crazy. Another tip I have is to always clean the tip of your blender pencil after you change colors. So if I was to use this color here, just quickly, and then if I show you the tip, it would have transferred all that color. So now if I was to go into this color here, that will transfer that color over onto that color, and that's going to drive you crazy. So the pigment really does transfer easily. The way to clean it is just grab a scrap piece of paper and just, obviously this isn't a scrap piece of paper, but for example, just keep going until it comes clean. Another way you can do it is just to put it into your pencil sharpener, sharpen all that dirty stuff off. Another good tip is always protect your work when you are using your blender pencil. So for example, when I'm doing this page, what I should be doing is I should be having my piece of paper or some type of towel or something on here. So when I'm colouring in the rest of this, I'm not smudging all this with my wrist, because it's a process you do at the end, because you usually will do your blender pencil at the end. It is really easy to accidentally smudge your other work, and you don't want to do that right when you get to the end. So just make sure you have a little bit of paper there, so when you're actually blending all your colours together, you're not smudging the other part of your page. My last and best tip is to always have some spare blender pencils. I eat these up. Seriously, I can get through half of this with 2 pages. If you're really pushing hard and you keep having to clean it, it goes really, really quickly. And when you don't have a blender pencil and you need one, it's super frustrating. I've found over here in Australia, sometimes they're easy to get a hold of and sometimes they are impossible to get a hold of. So I never pass them by. If I see them on sale, I always grab a few, and trust me, they will always come in handy. So to be honest, the blender pencil was one of my biggest aha moments when I started colouring, and to this day, I still love it. I really cannot believe the difference that it can make to your colouring page. So hopefully you found this video a little bit helpful, and if you've never tried one of these little beauties, seriously, go out and get one. They're not expensive. You honestly will never look back. So thank you so much for watching, and if you guys have any little sneaky tips that I haven't mentioned, I would love to know, so let me know in the comments. Also, let me know in the comments if you enjoyed my video. Thanks very much for watching. See you. Happy colouring. Bye.